Jason. Well,
Hey.
welcome to Leading is Serving podcast. I got it down.
There you go. Good to see you today, Chris.
Good to see you too. Episode number
22.
22.
22, yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's a good day.
it is.
Yeah, good day. We're sliding into spring a little more, and
Yes, I'm
we got a good
excited.
interview coming up here in a little bit.
Excited about some of this warmer weather. I got to tell you,
Yeah.
I'm tired of the cold.
Yep.
So, what are we talking about today?
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about the leader mindset of, as we move into, this post-COVID world, kind of the 21st century, digital age, there's a lot of study going on in the world about how times are changing.
Right.
And how we're entering into this new, kind of new culture, new phase of life. And globally, things are completely different.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what does a leader look like? What does the mindset of a leader look like moving into this new age? How do we build influence with those around us? Because a lot of leadership in the past has been positionally based. I have a title, I've been promoted to this level, and so I'm in charge. But today, in our culture, it's more about influence.
Yes.
And people are much more willing to listen to a variety of voices who have influence because of integrity, because of, a proven track record, that it's not necessarily because you've achieved a certain title.
Right.
So what does that leadership mindset look like? And that goes to the core of why we're doing this podcast.
It's exactly
Leading
right.
is serving. That to lead, to serve as a leader is to basically fight for the highest good of the lives of those they lead.
Right. Completely agree.
And that's not just on the job front.
Right.
What a lot of it gets me too. What a lot of young leaders are looking for is for someone, in their company, in their business, or their corporation, to not just see them as an employee, what they can, what the business can get out of that person, but someone who is willing to fight for their highest good, not just at work,
Right.
but in all spheres of life.
Yes.
That when, a young couple who have a baby, they want to know, is my company going to fight for me, even in my home life?
Yep.
Through maternity leave or whatever that might look like, do they have my highest good in mind?
Right.
Are they going to fight for me? And so there's 5 different things that we actually are going to take a deeper dive in the next 5 episodes.
Okay.
On each of these. So we can kind of hit these on a high level today. But the idea is, does a leader liberate the people that they lead? Because leadership can be dominating.
Totally.
It can totally drive people into the ground, create a culture of fear and distrust. It can go the complete opposite end of the spectrum and be this very protective, oh, hey, I support you, I love you, but we're never clear with expectations. And so then eventually it's kind of this Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde thing, that here's this wonderfully supportive leader, but because the expectations aren't clear, the monster pops out.
Right.
And well, we haven't hit this metric, 6 weeks in a row. Well, why didn't we talk about it after week 1?
Right.
Those expectations are never clear. And then, and then there's just leadership that just do what you want. We abdicate our leadership and we just say, just do what you want, you know? And so the goal of an effective leader is to liberate the people that are underneath us. And to do that is that you have to bring both support and challenge in appropriate levels and in an effective way to the people underneath you. And so, too much challenge goes that domination way. And if all we do is, if we challenge, and we never bring some support, that's where it goes dominating.
Right.
And if all we do is bring support and we never challenge, that's where it goes to that protective, just level. So how do we do effective in both areas of that?
Right.
And by nature, there is really no one that's wired to do both well.
Yeah.
We're going to lean one way or the other.
Yes.
We just are.
It is.
I will lean to the protective side.
Yeah.
I have a harder time giving clear expectation, clear challenge to where I want to go, where we need to go. And so that's a skill that I'm having to learn to get there.
Right.
And so, that's the number one thing of, can you bring effective support and challenge to the people that you lead? That's the number one mindset of a leader. The second one that we want to talk about is, what role does this person need to play on the team? Are they in the role? Or I think it's Jim Collins. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
As the Good to Great talks about the right people in the right seat on the right bus.
Right.
And it's not a problem to switch seats and get people in the right alignment with the mission and the purpose of the company and things like that. And so what role do they play, and are they in the right place? And so a leader is always looking out for that, always looking for, if the business is shifting, maybe our alignment needs to shift with what we do. And we actually, the interview today, is serving at a church in a similar capacity that I serve here at New Hope. And both of our organizations over the last 2 years have done this very thing. That leadership has shifted, people have left the bus, and we've shifted the roles around who we are and what we need to do and what the new times call for in the midst of COVID. And so good leaders are always looking toward that. And then kind of related to number one, the third thing is, our expectations clear?
Yeah,
That's
huge.
Have you really sat down with your team? Have you sat down with those people and made a clear expectation moving forward of, here's what winning looks like, here's what success looks like, here's the pitfalls and what losing looks like, and we want to steer away from those? Are those expectations clear? And then the fourth thing that we'll talk about is, what is the tendency or pattern that is undermining influence? We've gone through the 5 voices. We've talked about how each of the 5 voices communicate in a very specific manner. But in that, we also have pitfalls. We have a weapon system that will come out when we're tired, when we're stressed, when we're hangry, when we're when we're burned out. It's easier for that kind of the negative side of our voice to take prominence, and when we do that, it undermines our influence. And so, as a creative voice, first voice, I can speak about future ideas and future things coming down the road in such abstract ways that really nobody gets. And that can potentially undermine my influence, going, Jason has no clue what he's ever talking about.
Right.
The team listens, nods their heads, and then they just move on. And so, what influence am I building there?
Right.
And so, what are the ways that we are unintentionally undermining our influence? So there's, how many stories are in our culture today about leaders who have intentionally made a decision that have screwed their influence over, right?
Totally.
And so, this is talking about those unconscious tendencies of how we communicate, how we treat others. And so we'll dive into that. But also the fifth one is, how do I get team members to the next level? How do we raise leadership? Because a lot of times, in past corporations, we're bad about, it's our bottom line, it's the growth of the corporation that matters. Right. But a true leader in today's culture is out for, not how do I get to the top, but how do I bring others with us?
Right.
And Giant Worldwide, which is where a lot of these tools come from, use the mentality of Sherpa. When you're climbing Mount Everest, the Sherpa is the one who was actually born. They're a people group. It's not a job. Their last name is actually Sherpa. Did you know that?
I didn't.
Yeah. So when you're born, you actually take on the last name Sherpa, and they're born at 14,000 feet above sea level. Oh. And so genetically, their bodies are just more accustomed to low levels of oxygen at that altitude. And so they are physically, uniquely designed to be a Sherpa. And so people go and they say it takes 3 months to acclimate, and these people just live there. And if you ask a Sherpa, this is, I think, one of the most fascinating things about the Sherpa mindset. If you ask them, how many times have you summited Mount Everest? They have no clue. They don't know. Because they've gone up. They're the ones that set the bridges, the ladders, the ropes, the handholds. They've been up and down the mountain hundreds of times, probably thousands of times.
Goodness.
They don't know. Yeah. But if you ask them, how many people have you helped summit? They know how many people they've helped. And so the goal for them is not getting to the top. Yeah. The goal for them is how many people have I successfully gotten to the top and back down alive. Right. And so that is the mindset. That Sherpa mindset is what makes a great leader today. Of, our business is great. Yeah, our corporate, whatever we're after, the mission, yes, that's great. But I am out for your highest good. And it's not just about me making it to the top on your shoulders. Right. I'm bringing you with me. And so how can I help others get to the next level?
That's
So
awesome.
that is the mindset of a leader that we want to promote, that we want to be a part of. I know it's what I'm after in my
Yes,
life.
same here.
And, and so how do we fight for the highest good in the lives of people we lead?
I look forward to breaking those down and chatting with you some more about those. Those are great.
Yeah. There's some individual tools that, will guide our discussion on each of those five things, from expectations to support and challenge to, people in the right roles and things like that. So I look forward to that conversation.
Yeah, sounds like a lot of fun.
Tune in for the next 5 weeks as we talk further about the leader mindset, right?
That's awesome.
Dive in a little deeper.
Yeah.
But, I'm really excited about our guest today.
Yes, so am I. Bryan Ottney.
Mm-hmm.
He has multiple roles.
He
from what
does.
I understand it. Like you mentioned, he is a pastor,
Mm-hmm.
as well as he helps his parents run their business.
Right. It's part of the family business.
Part of family business, which is Greens Auto.
Right.
Here on Morgantown. So on the south side. So I'm super excited about chatting with him about all his, because those, you don't usually put a car in the pastor's office and to work on it. So I'm curious. These are two very different skill sets.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe they're not. I don't know.
Well, this is just totally goofy squirrel. We'll just follow this real quick before we jump over the interview. How's that? I visited a church in Oklahoma once.
Yeah.
Out in the hot Oklahoma, and the pastor had installed in the pulpit, one of those big old, traditional wooden pulpits that you can probably hide 5 or 6 people inside the pulpit.
Yeah.
He kept getting hot because when you're doing your thing, I guess preaching on a Sunday, it gets really hot in Oklahoma.
Right.
He had taken the air conditioner out of a Volkswagen Bug and installed it in the pulpit.
Oh, are you kidding me?
And so stories from the church was apparently about, they knew the sermon was about half over because about halfway through every Sunday he'd reach over and flip the switch and
That's awesome.
So maybe if you ever need a air conditioner in a pulpit, Bryan's your guy. We'll
Bryan's
see.
the guy pulling out of a cold car.
That's right. That's right.
awesome.
So I'm looking forward to this interview. We'll get back to that.
Yeah.
Get back on track. We'll shoot that squirrel and be done.
That's too funny.
Yeah. Looking forward to talking to Bryan. So let's jump over and we'll catch you guys here in a moment.
Sounds good. Bryan, thanks for joining us today. We are super excited to have you here, and we are excited to learn more about you. Can you give us some background information? Where did you grow up? Where did life start for you?
Yeah, so we originally born in Indianapolis. First 4 or 5 years of my life, I grew up on the west side of Indianapolis, and we moved down to the south side when I was about 5 or 6 years old. So I was CG kid, kindergarten through graduation. So mostly been here my whole entire life. Went to the old Maple Grove that's now like a alternative school or something like that. But been here, pretty much my entire life. I went to Lincoln Christian College. Now it's Lincoln Christian University. So I did spend some time in Illinois after high school for schooling, for college, and but then came right back home. And we're pretty much born and bred here. One of the crazy things too is about, of course, we have our family business here in this area, which is a large part why we moved down to the south side from the west side of Indianapolis. But then currently the church that I serve in is actually about 1.5 miles from the house I grew up in, which my parents still live in. So, I'm born and bred here. CG kid, like I said, through and through. My kids also go to CG as well. But
Okay.
I pretty much been here my whole life.
What was undergrad in?
In youth ministry.
Youth ministry.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So, and just to catch everybody else up, your parents own a automotive
repair. Yeah.
Automotive repair.
Greens Auto Service.
And you are very much involved with that. And you also have another job that you do.
Yes.
You have 2 full-time jobs. I'm still wrapping my head around that idea. Yeah. But you're an associate pastor at a church here locally too.
Yeah.
Okay. So undergrads in youth ministry.
Yeah. Lincoln Christian. Yeah.
Bring us from that point forward.
Yeah. So kind of cool in terms of just how God works. So I went to Lincoln Christian, played basketball there freshman year. I went there 2 years, so it would have been, what is that, 04, 05, 06, and 07 would have been my sophomore year. I actually left school in my sophomore year and came back home and went into sales. I was actually working at a place called Best Buy. I think it's still open. I don't know. But I worked there for a while, and even while I was in college, I come home for the weekends and work there. And I actually left school. I went to a Christian college, which, by the way, let me just say, I love LCC. I love LCU. Great people there, great staff, great administration. But I went to a Christian college, and I think I was a little bit naive or immature when I went there, and I found an experience where I went here to avoid all the things that you're going to be faced with at a secular school, and found really quickly that all those same things are still there, Yeah. And that's not a condemnation of Christian education in any form or any stretch, but I found that those things were still there, and in my immaturity and in my being naive, it sort of, and at some level, kind of broke me. I grew up in Mount Pleasant Christian Church, was really involved in the youth ministry, a leader in the youth group, led small groups, all these different things, and went, on fire for God to ministry. And after about 2 years of college, I found myself kind of questioning, what am I even doing here? I'm alongside all these other people who are also going to be going into ministry and doing these different things. And we're no better, no different than the rest of the world. We're doing all these same worldly things. So anyway, again, a lot of this was out of my own immaturity and being naive. And I ended up back home, worked at Best Buy for I think it was about 6 years or so, where I met my wife, Molly. She worked in customer service. I was in the car audio installation bay back there, and met her there. And we ended up getting married a year and a half, I think, after that. So we've been married like a long time now. So, so from there, I started kind of seeing the craziest thing happen when I'm working on the sales floor at Best Buy. I had transitioned from the installation bay or the cave in the back to actually moving into sales on the floor. And I had this young man walk up to me. He was several years younger than me, and we didn't have much of a relationship necessarily. I mean, we knew of each other. We'd worked together for a few years. He was in a completely different department, other side of the store. And he walks up to me and he goes, man, I had just a dream last night, and I was, in prayer and things like that. And he goes, I really felt like God was putting on my heart to ask you this question, Bryan. And I'm like, what is, like, he doesn't even know that I'm a Christian, I don't think, at this point. And he goes, I felt like God was wanting me to ask you, when are you going to start taking him seriously? And in that moment on the car audio sales floor at Best Buy, a pretty much stranger asked me this question that little did he know would absolutely like cut me to my core. And from that moment on, I kind of knew again, which I kind of always knew, but I sort of was running from God. That's why I think I appreciate Jonah so much. But I was running from God in a lot of ways, and in that moment, I knew I was like, okay, I've got to make a change here. And that first transition was actually moving into our family business. And I sort of convinced myself, like, okay, I've known since my junior year of high school that God was calling me into ministry. I dedicated my life to ministry on a youth trip, my junior high year of high school, and I've known it since then. And here I am, 22, 23 years old, or whatever it was, and this question's brought before me. And I was like, okay, I got to make a change. So I convinced myself that the ministry that God was calling me into was our family business, because it's very much, an automotive repair, but also a ministry in a lot of ways in terms of serving and helping the community and what have you. So I convinced myself that that's actually where God was calling me. And I think I knew deep down inside that wasn't it. But I was convincing myself, like, this is kind of the easier path, right? Because this is comfortable. I grew up here. I know cars. This is like second nature. So that's what I'm going to do. So I had a conversation with my dad about coming and working for the family business, and he's like, yeah, come on, and if that's what you want to do, I'm happy to support you and help you and teach you the things you don't know and all that stuff. So began that transition and into our family business, so which was just phase one. Little did I know, right? And so, several years later, I think almost probably about 10 years go by at this point, and I'm working in our family business, and I'm loving it. I love the freedom that comes with it. You know, I've got young children at the time, and being able to go to their ball games and be at the schools for all these different things, and just absolutely love it. So something happens. My dad and mom have been involved in church since I was, a little, 5, 6 years old, and they started taking us into church, grew up in the church. And mom and dad are involved in church, and dad is actually playing in the worship band over at a local church here, Greenwood Christian Church. And he's getting ready to go to a summer camp and play for elementary school kids. I think they had maybe 100 or 120 elementary kids. They're taken down to Camp Allendale for a summer camp. And my dad is riding his motorcycle, heading down to the bank in Bargersville. They live there on Saddle Club Road, and he has a motorcycle accident. And so I am at the shop. My mom calls frantic. Dad had an accident on the bike, yada, yada, yada. Then I jump in the car. He's literally like 4 blocks from their house. Jump in the car. I go down there. I see him, on the side of the road. And, of course, that was a moment,
right.
in and of itself, seeing him lay there. And then the ambulance is there, and they're getting him kind of buttoned up and taken away. And, I sort of was responsible for getting the motorcycle back to the house in some fashion and all this stuff. Well, I didn't know that he was supposed to be going and playing drums at this camp. Now, I grew up in the church, like I said. I played drums in our youth group, in our junior high youth group, senior high youth group, played drums in our main services multiple times at Mount Pleasant, all this kind of stuff. I'd sort of walked away from that as well because, that was a form of intimate worship that I didn't necessarily want to be a part of because I knew that it would make me even more vulnerable to what I knew God was really leading me into. So he has this motorcycle accident, breaks his collarbone, breaks rib. He's all sorts of messed up for multiple weeks. And so he says to me, he's like, hey, I'm supposed to play drums at this camp. Now, I haven't played in, it's been at least probably 6 or 7 years at this point since I've played. And he's like, I need you to fill in for me. And I'm like, this is my dad. I'd do anything for my dad. And I'm like, well, okay, Dad, I can do that. I'll do that. And he's like, I'll go with you. You'll have to drive, of course, but I'll go with you, and we'll take all my sound equipment, yada, 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 and all that stuff. And we'll have the rehearsals, at his house in the basement and all this stuff. And I'm like, all right, I'm doing it for my dad.
Right.
Like, yeah, I'll do this because you asked me to and all that. So long story short, we do the rehearsals. I meet some great guys from Greenwood Christian. We go down to this camp. I play this week-long camp at Allendale every night. So I was picking my dad up, heading down there every night. We'd play for the camp. We come home, all that kind of stuff. And I'm still very much like, I'm just doing this for my dad. And the last night of camp, their previous worship pastor, Eric Radecki, I know Jason knows Eric. And, Eric Radecki comes up and he goes, hey, man, I just wondered, are you interested sometime playing for the church? And I listened to you play and all that kind of stuff. And inside I'm going, no. Like, I'm just doing this for my dad, right?
Right.
So inside everything's screaming no, and then out of my mouth comes yes. And immediately I thought, what is going on? No, that's not the response that was inside. Yeah. So I said yes, and kind of against everything inside of me, got involved at Greenwood Christian, playing in the worship band. One thing leads to another. We're there for a little while, year and a half, something like that, involved in the worship band, building relationships with people again. God's really moving and working in my life and in my family's life. And I'm back at the family business at Green's. I had brought a guitar in to the office, and I was actually giving it to their lead pastor at Greenwood Christian. He was going to refinish it for his son, and it was an old guitar I'd had since I was a kid, and his son was just starting to learn or something like that. And so I've got this guitar sitting behind my desk, and this guy comes walking in, and he looks over and he goes, oh, hey, whose guitar is that? I was like, yeah, that's mine. I'm giving it to somebody later. He's coming to pick it up. And he's like, oh, cool. Do you play the guitar? And I was like, yeah, I do. I've played since I was younger. But I was like, and then I made this mistake that I've learned. You don't say this if you go to church. You don't tell them you play drums.
Right.
You don't do that because drummers are apparently scarce in the church. And I said, yeah, I play the guitar, but really I'm a drummer. And he goes, really? Do you want to come play drums at my church sometimes? And I'm like, who are you? And again, I'm like, no, stranger, I don't want to come play. But I said, yes. Yeah, I'll come play. And he was the worship pastor at Bluff Creek Christian Church. And so I went and I played, and we've got 2 buildings over at our church. We've got, an 11 or 12-year-old building that we built, and we've got a really old building that was built like in the 40s or something, and that's actually been converted into our student center. Well, we had rehearsal in that old building, and I'm walking in, and I'm like, what did I get myself into here? Like, this prehistoric, you know.
It's a cool building.
Yeah, it is cool, but I was like, what is good? This is not what I'm used to, you know.
Right.
And then he's like, no, they're having VBS this week over there. The worship's actually over in the new building. That's our worship center. I was like, oh, okay, you know. And so anyway, I went there and played, and then all of a sudden, every other weekend, one weekend I'm playing at GCC, one weekend I'm playing at Bluff Creek, and one thing leads to another. We start getting involved at Bluff Creek. My wife and I talked and prayed about it, and we're like, this feels like home. Like, this feels like where we're supposed to be, you know, involved and plugged in. Started volunteering with the youth, got involved in some small groups, had some conversations with the pastor at the time, and told him, I'd studied youth ministry, and like, I know that God's, and little did I know this whole time, they're actually looking for a part-time student pastor during this whole season.
Oh, wow.
And I had no clue. And so one thing leads to another, and we have a conversation, and he just asked me, he's like, so when are you going to be ready to, you know, move into the ministry? And I was like, I'm like, what are you talking about? You know? And
Right.
He's like, you know, I wanted to talk to you about this part-time position. We've been looking, you know, you don't know this, obviously, and you've been here now for about 6 months to a year, and we wanted to, you know, sit down and have a real conversation about what this looks like. And I'm like, again, everything inside screaming no, and yes comes out of my mouth again. And one thing led to another. I started on staff part-time there, working with our senior high and junior high kids. Originally, I was over junior high and senior high. And the Lord just continued to work and move in me and in our church and in other people. God was using other people to identify things in me that I had long since thought were put to bed and didn't exist any longer. And I just really blessed. And so now I'm working full-time ministry at Bluff Creek Christian Church as the associate pastor. And I just know that I took the long way around. And I broke a lot of things on the way, but I know that this is where I'm supposed to be. And as I mentioned earlier, the irony is that the church I'm serving in is 1.5 miles from the house I grew up in, and it's even now it's crazy for me to even think about that, you know. But that's where I'm at now. So help out at our family business with some marketing and things like that. But I'm kind of all in on the ministry.
So if you don't mind me asking, I'm gonna touch on some of the stuff that I know you went a long way around about it.
Yeah.
But what I really appreciate is everybody has a journey, right? And at some level, like we constantly are talking about leading and serving, and at some level, you were leading in that process and serving. And I love your servant's heart. How would you say that God led you through that process for you growing as a person and trying to understand better what God wanted you to be?
Yeah, I think in large part he used my family, but he also used strangers in a lot of ways. And that's the part that I think is super weird to me, is that he used people who are strangers to me to pull things out of me that I thought were put to bed, you know, a long time ago. And I think it's just a testament to how important it is to have a community of believers in your life and around you, other people who are walking faithfully with the Lord, and reading His Word and knowing what they're called to bring that out into out of other people. And so, yeah, I really think that he used one of the things that was really difficult, and that was like a pretty severe and traumatic injury to my father, my earthly father. Right. That broke my heart enough that allowed other people to get in there, you know. And I don't know that if it were not for that accident, which, man, I hate the fact that, you know, my dad had to go through that for my heart to break so that other people could infiltrate it. But also at the same time, you know, I'm so thankful that God worked in that way. You know, sorry, Dad, but I'm so thankful that God worked in that way and brought me to a point of brokenheartedness where other people were able to come and be a part of that healing, you know, and bringing me back to what I already knew was true. That's the crazy part. Like, I already knew it was true, and I think that this is true of most people, at least that had walked in faith at one time. You know, we know what's true, but it a lot of times feels so foreign to what feels right, or is so foreign to what feels right, or what we think is right, and so we reject it, we resist it, you know. And I'm just so thankful for other faithful people in my life along the way again, who were largely strangers to me, that God made them bold enough to say hard things and ask hard questions and take a chance on me. And so I'm really thankful for that.
That's awesome.
I want to backtrack to growing up in the family business, but before we do, you've made a comment a couple of times about, knowing what is true and things that were put to bed, you thought were put to bed, that you have come back around to, because it's probably easy for people who knew you growing up, knew you in your early 20s and 30s to go, oh, this is a car guy.
Yeah.
But now you're an associate pastor at a church.
Yeah.
Who is Bryan Ottney at the core? What are those things that make you uniquely you? That you're like, yeah, this is the way I'm wired. These are my strengths. This is what I bring to the table.
Yeah. And I think part of that too is like the identity that other people give you, you assume a lot of the times and just kind of fall in line because you go, yeah, this is who I am. I'm one of the boys that works at Greens, or whatever. And it's like, well, I'll just assume that identity because that's easy. But I think that just, who I am at the core is someone who messes it up a lot, even still, but that wants to just passionately and obediently follow Christ. And that's always, been deep down inside of me. I think since I was a young kid and the troublemakers at Mount Pleasant Christian Church and being part of the that kids service, one of the ladies who is really interactive on my Facebook page a lot, her name's Mary Smith. She was my Sunday school teacher at Mount Pleasant when I was 6 or 7 years old. First lady to ever really teach me about Jesus, and that is something that is who I am at the core. Someone who is flawed and broken and often confused, but wants to faithfully follow Christ in every aspect of my life. And I got to be honest with you, at times that is most times way more difficult than it is easy. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about it, is the natural resistance that we put up against it, because we live, I tell our senior high students, we live, as aliens in this world, and it's foreign to want to just radically and passionately be obedient to Christ, even in the moments when you're alone, and it's a constant battle and a constant struggle to be faithful in a world that's largely unfaithful, and at this point, I think doesn't know God, and so my core is someone who I know that God has always instilled in me the ability to lead others. I think that God has always kind of, even when I don't want to, has always kind of put that in front of me, and always given me a heart for other people in terms of empathy and things of that nature, which is often uncomfortable, as well. But that's I think who I am. And as you get older and you have just different hardships in life and regrets, and make decisions that ultimately lead to destruction in a lot of ways, it's even harder to, I think, sometimes rest in those truths because of all of the regret and the shame that came from the previous decisions. Like, for example, being a degreeless pastor, that's even foreign in the church world.
Right.
You walk in a lot of circles and they're like, oh, you don't have a, well, if I hadn't told you I didn't have a degree, you'd have never known.
Right.
And so, but I like to tell people a lot of times, 'cause I like to look on their face mostly. That's just a little enjoyment I get. But yeah, and I think that it's a testament to just how good God is. It's got nothing to do with me or anything that I am or that I'm doing or have done, but to the goodness of God.
Right.
So,
Right.
That's awesome.
So I'm curious, now backtracking a little bit,
Yeah.
what's it like, I guess, growing up in a garage,
Oh yeah. It's
and tell us a little bit about the heartbeat behind Greens. That yes, it is an automotive repair, but you guys have some other goals, some other things.
Yeah. Well, that's in large part, first of all, we ate a lot of pizza growing up. Slept on the couch in the break room many, many nights. It was, I wouldn't trade those experiences for anything, but smell like oil a lot when you go to school. No, I'm just kidding. But the heartbeat behind that, mom and dad opened the Greens in 1989. I was 4 years old, and I'm the youngest of four boys. And, I just saw in my dad, my dad is very much a person who believes that there's a right way and a wrong way to do things. And I think a lot of the things he found, he worked at Firestone through the 70s and into the 80s, and he was sort of the guy that would go to a failing store and sort of get them back on track, and that was kind of his MO. And at one point in the late 80s, he met a guy who he partnered with named Jack Green, who asked my dad, hey, do you want to go into business for yourself? Because he was able to identify in my dad something that maybe my dad wasn't able to even see in himself. And those are just those natural leadership qualities that he has. And so my dad has the leadership and the structure and the abilities and the knowledge, and my mother has the compassion and the love and all of these things. And so not only do they make a great blend together as husband and wife, but also as owners of a business and a community, where we're able to just really love on people, and really be able to, support. And I remember one of the owner of the Christian Phone Book, did an interview with him, and he made a comment once, and he's been coming into the shop since inception, since we opened, and his name's Kent Yowie, and he had said to me, he's like, I could see, one of you guys like having a customer in with a hard day and just coming around the corner and saying, hey, can we pray with you? And I thought, man, like, that's just so cool that like he had that perception, and we may not always do that, or we may not always get it right, obviously, but that's, kind of the perception of who we are. We're first and foremost, faithful followers of Jesus. And then next we're automotive people,
Right.
in the business world. But I've made this comment to you guys earlier, and I've said it, to my dad before too. It's like, man, if we just change the structure a little bit, we could all be really wealthy, But that's not the heartbeat. My dad's always maintained that he wanted to make a good, honest living to support his family, but he also wanted to make a difference in our community. And I think for, the past 30 plus years, he and my mom have been able to do that through Green's Auto Service South. And so the Greens, I think, is a means to an end in the sense that it provides for our family, and that we're bringing some good to our community, but also it gives my parents and some of my siblings as well the freedom to be able to love on people in a different way than maybe they're used to. And so I think that's really cool. Yeah, and I love being a part of that too.
That's awesome.
Cool.
It's the setup that you have there is really impressive, in the fact that you mentioned that you have an opportunity to even pray with somebody. Do you ever find that difficulty or struggle with trying to take the time to
sure.
Versus we got to get this card
Yeah.
out, like, I mean,
Sure.
it's and it's granted it's our world, right, that we
Yeah.
live in, but do you feel that tug as well?
Yeah, sure. I mean, one of the things I think that I really love and appreciate about my brother and Mitchell, who run our day-to-day stuff, is they're always willing to have a conversation with somebody. My brother, even to a fault, I love it, but he'll talk for somebody for a long time, whether it's an explanation or whether it's listening or whatever, and just has a heart for other people. I think even though he might not say he does have a heart for other people. And so there's always that struggle where it's like, and I faced this, I think, early on when my brother Michael and I sort of took over the day-to-day operations, was man, I just have this push I want us to be more successful. I want us to go to the next level of whatever we're doing. And now we've got all these other competition that's coming into town and da-da-da-da-da. And we want to make sure we're, in a sense, not just keeping up with them, but also, just crushing it and killing it and da-da-da-da-da. And, I think that's a natural sort of feeling or desire to want to be more successful and all that kind of stuff. And, to fight that with, man, these are real people across the counter with real problems, and real needs. And we care about them more than we care about making an extra buck or two off of them or whatever,
Right.
And my brother's really good at this, going above and beyond. If there's ever, like an error, or if there's ever a problem, he'll take the time and he'll even, like take someone's vehicle to a place a lot of the times to fix something that may have happened if there was a scratch or whatever, over the years. And he kind of is exceptional in that sense of going above and beyond for people.
That's awesome.
Which is just really cool to see. But yeah, it's very much, it's very much a ministry as much as it is a business in a lot of ways, and I think the cool thing too is I think I saw this, I don't know, years and years ago where someone made a comment on social media about the guy driving around his work truck with the fish on the tailgate, and it's like, or like, hey, we're a Christian business or whatever, and it's like, and then someone, I think, who was a non-Christian shared it and said, a family member even said something along the lines of, you shouldn't have to have the fish on your vehicle. You shouldn't have to say, hey, we're a Christian business for people to know that that's what you believe. And so that's also kind of the heartbeat of it too. Is like, I shouldn't have to tell you like, yeah, we're all believers. We're all Christians here. Come bring your car to us. It's like, no, we're going to do business and treat people in such a way that it's evident that we follow a God that's bigger than all of us.
That's awesome.
So
let me ask you this, and you've learned a lot over this time in doing a lot as well. But what's the best piece of advice that anyone's ever given you?
Man, best piece of advice that anyone's ever given me. I would say, truthfully, that the best advice I've gotten, and probably a roundabout and maybe indirect way, is that it's not about me. Whether it's our family business, the ministry, my family, it's not about me. And I can be a headstrong and prideful person at times, and want things to be my way, and I think even more so as my kids get older, it's even more evident to me that I want things my way, when I want them done, and how I want them done, and I think that's probably the best advice, at least that's changed my perspective about life in general, but also about relationships, is that it's not about me. Nothing really is about me. And so I take that to heart and try to remember that, even when I'm talking to other people, because naturally I think like most others, when someone's telling me their story or telling me about them, my knee-jerk reaction is like, I want to relate, so I'm going to tell you something about me to relate to what you are saying, as opposed to just listening and hearing what they're saying and maybe celebrating what they're saying or grieving what they're saying, whatever's appropriate for the conversation, and know that it's like, it's not about me. It's always about the person across from you. So.
Well, I love the part of your journey where you talk about following your call, and you said, I really appreciate Jonah. This is a theme that's come up on a lot of the podcast episodes recently, of people who have, found the courage to make that shift, make that change, and actually do what they feel they were made to do. So what, if somebody's out there running at the moment, going, I'm just burying these things deep, and, I don't want to follow them. What would you say to them in terms of, it's okay. You don't have to keep running. Run in the opposite direction. Run toward it.
I would say that I think at some level, once you have the knowledge and know what you're called to do, once that happens, at some level, God's going to bring that around, and you can go the long, hard way, or you can surrender and ask him for his peace that only he can give. Because whether it's finding your dad laying on the side of the road in a motorcycle accident, or some kind of brokenness that will lead you to where God's ultimately calling you, I think that a faithful God is going to make it happen. And so my advice to them would be, first and foremost, just get down on your knees and pray and talk to God, and just bring before him what you already know is true in you, what he's calling you to, or what he called you to that you've been running from. And the thing is although it seems difficult, because that calling might go against everything that maybe you're taught in your family, in your education, in your current place of work, it might be foreign, and you might have to risk a lot. You might go, well, I don't know, how am I gonna support my family when I'm making this life altering change, and I would also encourage and say that God has a way of bringing up people around you and alongside of you when you're walking faithful to what he's calling you to, that are going to support you and love you. The best example of this I could give would be, we've got a student in our youth group right now that's going on to Johnson University next year and following that call of ministry that's been placed in her life in some capacity, and working out the details with God is what that's going to look like. But she made a comment to me about, it's crazy how once I kind of declared like that, this is where I'm going, this is what I'm going to do, how many people just out of the woodwork are coming around and putting their arms around her and supporting her and loving her, because they're like, we see your faithfulness and we want to walk alongside you in this. Right. And I think that people don't know how many people are around them that are going to come over and put their arm around them and say, hey, we see the bold steps you're taking. Not only is it inspiring to us, but we see your faithfulness to God, and we want to walk alongside you. You know, I was fortunate enough to have my mom and dad and my siblings, and of course my wife, who were like, yeah, let's go. You know, let's do this. And we're going to, and still support me to this day in so many ways that they probably don't even realize that help me get through the next season, you know, of ministry or whatever it is, you know. And so there are people in your life that are going to answer that call with you, you know, that you're not alone.
That's awesome.
That's cool. Well, what's the best way to get in contact with you? If something about your story really resonates with somebody and they want to know a little bit more, or, you know, how do they find you?
Yeah. So, of course, I think, you know, Facebook's probably the easiest, Bryan with a Y. No, but Bryan, you know, just on social media, through Messenger. But I'm also one that, and people that I work with in ministry call me crazy for this, but I always give out my personal phone number because, I mean, I don't really care that much. Like, if you have something, if you want to talk about something, shoot me a text, you know. And so I'll give you guys my number if you want to put it on the link or whatever, however that works.
Go for it.
But it's 317-910-5834. Shoot me a text. I love hearing from people. I love hearing their stories, because a lot of times, not only is it great to hear other people's stories and their journey, it's affirming in the same struggles that I'm still going through, in my faithfulness. And so I love talking to people. I love listening. I love sharing. I love all of those different aspects of relationships. So, yeah, reach out. I'd love to talk, listen, whatever is needed.
That's awesome.
And just real quick, Bluff Creek Christian Church is down on 144 on south side of Indy. What's the website for the church?
Yeah, so it's just bluffcreek.org.
Bluffcreek.org.
And my contact info is on there as well. So.
And if somebody's looking for a car repair, how do they get a hold of Greens?
Yeah, check out Greens Auto Service South on Morgantown Road. The greensautoservicesouth.com is our website. Kind of tells a little bit about our story on there, who we are and what we are about, and just some staff information and things like that.
You want to throw the office number out there too?
Yeah, give us a call at 317-881-5967. You'll be talking to my man Mitchell at the front counter, and he'll get you taken care of. So,
very cool.
Yeah.
Bryan, thank you for joining us today, man. Appreciate it so much.
Yes,
thank you guys.
It was very good to chat with you. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, I know I can talk a lot, so I'm sorry if I talk too much.
No, you're good. You're good.
I'm a preacher. What do you expect, right? So,
all right. Guys. We'll be back here in just a moment.
Well, Jason, I really enjoyed hanging out with Bryan today. It was just a breath of fresh air. I really appreciate where he's been.
Absolutely.
And there was just a lot of, man, what a servant's heart. I got to tell you, like, he definitely is leading and serving.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's just I'm so glad that he was able to come today and share with us with the many things that he's doing. Like, I'm always amazed with how much people are doing, and especially in a time where, like, everybody just keeps getting busier and busier. But he is a busy man.
I know. You got 2 full-time jobs, right?
Right? I'm still trying to wrap my head around
that. We might as well toss this out here real quick. We want to give a shout-out to one of our previous guests, Jason Adler, for connecting us, which is funny because Jason connected you to Bryan.
Yes.
And this was really kind of the first time you have ever met Bryan officially.
Officially.
Yeah. But I've known Bryan for years.
Oh, that's too funny.
But yeah, I mean, we met him through, the middle part of his journey, that when he was, in the family business, we were taking our high schoolers, our kids' cars over to Greens to get worked on because, we didn't buy anything fancy. Sorry, Michael and Sarah. And Green's helped us navigate those years of, we got 16-year-olds driving, and we can barely afford this as it is. So help us keep these cars on the road.
That's awesome.
And and so I didn't realize that his calling goes all the way back to his teenage years.
Yes.
And because I walked in the middle of that story, and I just kind of had an assumption of who he was, and man, how that's probably not true in how many of our relationships in life.
It is. It's so true. It's so true.
And so, but I really appreciate what he had to say about, what's true in your life, but a lot of times we just spend more time running from it than running toward it. And then when we turn toward it, I loved his comment about the community, the relationships around you that will help you follow your calling.
Yes.
And in his context is ministry, becoming a pastor. And, you mentioned their student that's headed to ministry as well. But I believe that's the same with every other area of life.
Right.
When somebody finds out who they are and they begin to lean into that and they begin to walk in it, people around us are going to see that, appreciate that, and support you in it. And
affirm that. Like,
absolutely.
Affirm that gift, affirm that ability to do whatever that is that you have come to terms with, which is huge.
Right.
Definitely shifting from somebody who's a teenager who's wandering, trying to figure out what's life all about, to figuring out what you want to do is a major shift. Major shift.
Yeah,
and
it is.
It's exciting to have people around you that are affirming that and showing them that. So that was great.
Yeah. And I just love having a drummer on the podcast too.
Right.
I always enjoy that side of things. But I'm really excited to know Bryan and journey alongside him. And
well, thanks again, Bryan, for joining us today.
Absolutely.
And make sure you hit a like on the podcast.
Do you want me to say it?
Yes, you said
it. Like, subscribe, send us a comment, send us an email.
Yes.
There's an email in the show notes.
I'm not taking your part away from you anymore.
No, you're fine. You're good. This is a partnership.
Right.
And I think this is, we're good.
We're good.
So, no, we'd love to hear from you if you've been listening along the way. If you know of a leader, Bryan came to us, even though it's a relationship that I've known for a little while.
Right.
He came to us through a connection of someone in the in the community going, you need to talk to this guy.
Yes.
So we would love to hear from you if you know somebody like that.
That sounds great.
But, hey, guys, you have a great day. Keep on serving through your leadership, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks so much.